I was good, y'all. So today I'm gonna be talking about why your brain rot literally makes you push less weight, okay? So I'm not gonna go around saying, your motivation, your dopamine. Like, literally, your brain rot makes you able to bench less, or deadlift, or squat, or whatever. Okay, so you're weak because your dopamine is literally cooked. But let me go, before you click away from this video and think it's some hop off TikTok and meditate. Yes, kinda, but I'm gonna take a different approach, which I haven't seen online, okay? So let's get some context first. So you're not as strong, but your body's fine. You sleep enough, you eat perfectly, you even form out like a faggot and track your RPE, and yet you're not progressing. So what's happening? It's not your muscles, or that you're not eating enough, or that your form isn't good. It's your nervous system, and more specifically your dopaminergic system. But first, let's get onto some theory. Strength isn't just a muscle thing, it's literally a brain thing, okay? Muscles don't move on their own unless you have fucking spasms or some shit. But they move when the brain tells them to. So the command of when you move a muscle travels through your central nervous system, and your motor cortex fires signals down the spinal cord, which is why if you break your back, your wee-wee doesn't work anymore, which activates the motor neurons. Okay, and those motor neurons are synapses within the muscle fibers that control a designated amount of myofibrils that do some fucking chemical shit and makes a contraction, okay? So your ability to lift heavy, I mean, it depends for each person and how healthy they are and how rotted they are. But for a lot of you, it's more about the signal quality than the actual amount of muscle you have, okay? So let's take Togian as an example. That motherfucker is on hella gear. He's big as fuck, and yet he barely struggles, like he struggles with 275. Why? Because his brain is cooked. He's on hella drugs, gambling, and that's really fucking his brain, his dopamine, which is why that motherfucker is not strong as fuck. Like he's not strong for shit. And what modulates that signal? Dopamine. Okay, so dopamine is just not the motivation chemical. It's literally a neurotransmitter that controls movement, okay? And basically it's made from the amino acid tyrosine, which gets converted into L-dopa and then synthesized into dopamine. And one of its most critical roles is in the nigrostriatal pathway, where neurons from the project into the and this circuit is part of the basal ganglia, which regulates voluntary motor control, because not all muscles are controlled voluntary, right? Your heart is beating and you're not controlling that directly. When you swallow, the esophagus or your throat muscles or whatever, they go like this to push food down. Your intestines are literally full of muscles, but they're not voluntary muscles, right? So basically, this basal ganglia regulates how fast you move, how hard you contract, how smoothly the signal travels. And dopamine is the chemical that modulates the signal strength and patterning in the motor pathways. So this isn't just a theory, or it's literally just fucking textbook biology. If you paid attention to anything in high school, this should be like making sense. And for example, there are diseases that are caused from literally your brain not being able to produce dopamine to fucking compensate for the system, right? Like Parkinson's disease, which for the two of you that don't know what Parkinson's is a disease where you get tremors. You fucking start moving like this, and it makes it hard to move, makes it rigid to move, and it's a motor dysfunction disease, right? And it's not because they're fatigued or anything. It's literally because they don't make dopamine. It's literally only that. So now imagine voluntarily dulling the system every morning with TikTok, YouTube, like super mega yummy food, and just overall cheap dopamine, right? And it's not only cheap dopamine, I'll get onto that later, but it's easier to overstimulate yourself with cheap dopamine. So, neuromuscular recruitment, okay? This is how your body actually gets strong. Let's go deeper. Every time you move, your brain recruits motor units, right? Which is a group of muscle fibers that are innervated by a single motor neuron, like I said before. And usually, unless you're taxing yourself with a heavy movement, smaller, lower threshold units are recruited first, like slow twitch fibers. I'm pretty sure that there's a decent handful of you that have heard about this. So heavy efforts required recruiting higher threshold motor units, like big, powerful, fast twitch ones. So imagine you're doing 90% of your 1 rep max. You're initially going to be using higher threshold units. And yes, you can also use higher threshold units if with lower weights, but you have to go closer to failure for that. But here's the key. Recruiting those higher threshold units requires a fast, synchronized, and strong neural signal, okay? And that requires dopamine. If your dopamine tone is off, your CNS literally, like, it physically chemically won't be able to fire hard enough. You'll move, but poorly, and it depends for each person. But let's say like the average untrained person, they're leaving up to like, let's say 40% of their strength on the table because their brain doesn't know how to use the muscle. And for a trained person, they can use only up to 80% of their motor units. And let's say if you're a strength athlete and you focus on powerlifting, let's say, you might be able to push that to 90%, okay? But basically, have you ever heard that myth about you only use 2% of your brain or some stupid shit like that? That's not true, but it is true for muscle recruitment. For example, you only use 100% of your motor units on very stressful scenarios like life or death, right? I'm pretty sure all of you have heard that myth or legend about the lady that pulled a car to save a kid that was trapped under it. I don't know if that's true, but it is possible. Or another actual real scenario that happened is Eddie Hall. When that motherfucker deadlifted 500 kilos, he literally went through a process of going to a hypnotist to brainwash with himself and literally think that his kids were trapped under a car or some crazy shit like that. And he was able to use up to 100% of his motor units when he deadlifted that 500 kilos, which, yeah, he deadlifted those 500 kilos, but he suffered the consequences of using all like that much of motor units. That motherfucker went blind for 8 hours. His blood pressure was skyrocketing. His fucking heart rate was skyrocketing for hours. He suffered the consequences. So this is not some stupid pseudoscience bullshit. It's legitimate, and it's way under-talked, specifically in the strength community. So yeah, overstimulation destroys the signal quality, right? So what overstimulation actually does to your nervous system is that, like, when you scroll fast, you jump from app to app, you eat hyper palatable food, you fucking just binge all the time stimulus. Every one of those actions, right, it triggers a basic dopamine release. So do it enough times and your brain responds by the way any adaptive system does. It becomes resistant to it, okay? So it reduces the dopamine receptor sensitivity, it slows down the dopamine synthesis from tyrosine, it burns to the vesicular dopamine storage, it increases the autoreceptor feedback inhibition, and it lowers the dopaminergic tone. So when it's finally time to train or do some hard work, but in this context we're talking about lifting heavy weights, when it's time to lift the heavy weights, there's literally no dopamine left and your brain is chemically impossible to move heavy weights. Okay, so your nervous system is just running on fumes. So, CNS fatigue equals dopamine burnout, okay? I'm pretty sure a lot of you, especially if you do powerlifting, have heard the term of CNS fatigue. Maybe you've experienced it, I myself have. And, you know, it's a real thing, but let's explain it properly. That's related to what we've been talking about. Heavy training, specifically near max efforts and compound lifts like deadlifts or squats, put a massive stress on the under CNS and the dopaminergic systems. Each intense set increases the motor unit firing rate, requires sustained dopaminergic activation, elevates sympathetic nervous system output, triggers central fatigue via neurotransmitter depletion. But essentially, you're burning out your CNS, right? And you do it too often, and you're going to be experiencing symptoms like no motivation, emotional bluntness, caffeine stops working, you lift worse, you recover slower, you get weaker, you literally lose the ability to sleep because your cortisol is so high. There's a plethora of side effects, okay? But it's a real thing, right? And this is a real thing that powerlifters train around, they schedule around in their splits to avoid CNS fatigue because of dopamine. Except, you know, they don't talk about how brain rot is fucking it even more. So this is just textbook dopamine depletion, okay? But here's the twist. Overstimulation and overtraining hit the same system from two ends. You're scrolling too much, you're flooding your dopamine, you're burning it. You train too hard, you drain your dopamine, you're burning it. And the result, same. You're weaker, foggier, and disconnected from your body and literally unable to push as much weight, okay? It's a double whammy. Okay, and another thing is that you gotta treat your brain like your stomach, okay? Your brain is literally like your stomach. It doesn't run on fuel, it runs on stimulus, okay? And just like food, not all stimulus is created equal. I'm pretty sure you've heard all of this previously from another guru, but let me explain. You can feed your stomach a steak, okay? Or a Snickers bar. One is gonna be good for you, one is gonna be bad for you. But both will fill you up, okay? Even though only one nourishes you. Same thing for your brain. You can feed it 5 hours of deep work or 5 hours of TikTok. But here's the thing. When you eat a steak or a Snickers, you're gonna get satiated, you're gonna be full. The same for your brain. If you scroll for 5 hours on TikTok, you're gonna be full. If you do 5 hours of deep work, you're gonna be full. And that's the thing we should be avoiding, getting full. And where the elimination of cheap dopamine comes from is like eliminating shit from your diet, okay? Try going to bulk, try and gain 5 kilos of body fat on a carnivore diet. It's gonna be hard. It's gonna be hard. Even if you tried. That's the thing. Your stomach's going to be satiated all the time, and it's only going to be hungry when it needs to. Same with your brain. Okay, try go 10 hours with deep work. It's going to be hard. It's possible. It's going to be hard. Now go 5 hours with the 10 hours of TikTok swiping. It's not going to be as hard. Okay, but here's the thing. Here's the concept that you should take away from this slide. Fast your brain. Make your brain hungry. Okay, just because you eat a steak doesn't mean that is necessarily good for you. Sometimes you're supposed to be fasting your brain. Okay. So yeah, you gotta learn when your brain is satiated, and you gotta try and feed it only healthy shit. I know before any of your retards say you can't go on a fucking bulk for your brain. And this is one other reason why powerlifters outlift you. I mean, yeah, because they specifically train for it and they train their form, but bodybuilders, for example, have more sarcoplasmic hypertrophy and not necessarily more contractile tissue, while strength athletes, they practice their technique, they have more myofibrillary hypertrophy, but they also train their neural efficiency. Okay, they lift more not just because of training specificity, but because their CNS is trained to recruit more motor units than bodybuilders. And that process is literally just dopaminergic. It's just your dopamine. Now, how to fix your neurons and shit? So yeah, before training, no social media, no YouTube, no super yummy food, no news, no heavy stimulation at all. And that's on the short term, right? So give your dopamine give your fucking brain a break. But in the long term, make a routine to go on walks, read something boring, stare at the wall, meditate, do one thing at a time. So imagine you're playing a video game. Don't put on music, just focus on the fucking video game. Be patient. Imagine there's a loading screen on the video game. Don't go on your phone real quick just to check your messages. We all know that's just a fucking reflex. But yeah, be patient. Enjoy the boredom. One thing I started doing, I literally, those construction fucking headphones looking things that construction workers use to like block noise. What I started doing is 10 minutes a day, I turn off them fucking blinds, I put a blindfold and put the thing, and I'm just depriving my brain from any stimulus at all. I'm just lying on my bed for like 10 minutes, just in my own head. Start enjoying boredom, okay? So yeah, just dial back on your stimulation, whether it be positive or negative. You gotta dial back sometimes, and you'll feel stronger, more focused, more explosive, and obviously, your mind will be stronger for working, studying, etc. But yeah, and more of a personal anecdote. I started noticing this when I wanted to focus on my bench, and I noticed that on the days where I go on my phone immediately, I fucking underperform. Not necessarily because I was less motivated when I was going to go to the gym, but literally just my dopamine was already kind of fried. So even if I was eating perfectly, sleeping perfectly, drinking all my water, my electrolytes, I was still underperforming. And coincidentally, no matter how much I prepped, I was physically weaker when I spammed cheap dopamine. Well, dopamine in general, but it's easier to spam cheap dopamine anyway. So yeah, I started experimenting, literally just fasting dopamine, and within days my strength shot up. For example, I stopped deadlifting like for 3 months, and during those 3 months is when I realized about the dopamine thing. So I was like, fuck, I'm a deadlift, and I PR'd right there on the spot, and my grip strength fucking used to suck. Now it didn't, probably because of that. But bottom line, when you stop frying your brain, your strength will come back, and your brain literally just will be able to physically and chemically just use more muscle. So conclusion, you don't have a weak body, your brain is cooked. You don't need a deload, you don't need more protein, you need less stimulation, whether it be positive or negative. But for most of you motherfuckers, it's probably you need less negative stimulation. So preserve your dopamine, okay? Your brain needs it. Strength doesn't start with muscle, it starts with neurological drive. And neurological drive starts with dopamine sensitivity. Take care of that and the bar will move like it's supposed to, okay? Your strength equals your nervous system's power. Dopamine equals the currency it runs on. Don't waste it on reels, save it for the gym or for whatever positive activity you want to use. But that's my conclusion. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I'm gonna be back on that YouTube grind, so if you want some more juicy unorthodox gym content on how to get more muscle, stronger, healthier, whatever, yeah, just watch my other videos, and if you fuck with it, then sub up, I guess.